movies. And then you slap text onto it.
Yes, the movies just produce images that are, I won't say meticulously composed, because I spend maybe 15 minutes on those things. Okay.
We just need to make the thumbnail the explosion at the end of the Marriage of Maria Braun.
Oh, there's an explosion at the end
Oh,
of
yeah.
Marriage of Maria
yes.
Braun?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I'm excited to...
Reed wasn't making that Time Bandits reference up.
I was see, because I thought, I was like, well, it doesn't feel out of place, but it's kind of.
Well,
out of place.
the moment I saw her turn on the gas, I just said, "Oh my God, he was right."
I'm excited to not participate in the conversation about that movie. Look, I mean, because I watched Fox and His Friends first, and then after watching The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant, I had neither the time nor the inclination to watch another 2-hour Fassbinder movie.
Yeah.
So listen, 6 hours of Fassbinder is a lot for 1 week.
Yes.
It's a lot for one person in one life.
Maybe not a lifetime, but
Well, no, but within like 3 days, that's definitely
it's pushing it.
that is definitely pushing it, especially for me. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Welcome back to the Hack Fraud Show. We're coming to you live from John's house.
Yes.
All together here.
All together.
Yay.
All together now.
All together now. I'm not getting sued. No. Hey, I mean, listen, I called the last episode the jump scare cock. John reassured me that would be okay because no one listens to this episode, so I think we'll probably be okay in the music rights department.
Of course. Though granted, that was right after my mother said, "Hey, what's the name of your podcast my friends are curious about?" And I said, "Here's the channel," and I walked away.
Anyway, this week we're continuing our ongoing Summer of International Film with another trip to Germany for the works of Rainer Werner Fassbinder, the German impresario filmmaker.
Yes.
Guy worked for like 15 years, made over 40 movies.
Yep.
Wow.
Kind of a madman.
Kind of a madman, yeah. I might talk about his personal life later on in the episode.
Wildly interesting.
Wild, that is one way to put it. Bananas is what I would say. Bananas. But first, what am I doing? But first,
we're just throwing references at the wall and seeing what bounces off.
In the form of a lawsuit in the mail.
Well,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Well, if y'all wanna, I'm going to go. Is it alright if I go grab a glass of water?
Oh, certainly. I'll go get one for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Anyway, while he does that, first, the age-old question: what have we been watching? Reed, I take it from your expectant silence that you haven't been watching anything.
I'm gonna say Criminal Minds does not count. So that's
again with the Criminal Minds.
I think that's a fair rule
Reed, do you
for
want
this
something?
podcast. I guess I'll take a water. Never mind. Okay.
I suppose I should have realized you should always have something to drink while you're podcasting. John, what have you been watching?
Well, Tyler, I decided to stare into the gaping abyss and see the line between film and commercial.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
This wasn't my idea. I was at Matthew's house, and we were doing a sort of video game funnery. And then I came into the room, and Alex looked me in the eyes and said, "We have to watch the Emoji Movie." And I said, "I know what you guys want. You just want to watch me as I turn into a puddle of a man." And so I gave them that. I want to make this clear that we pirated it. There are very few movies that I will make clear that I pirate. This is one of them. Because no one should give it money.
Okay.
If anything, this is something I should be paid to do, like Darren Franich was.
So I must ask the other days old question we don't often ask. How should you pay for your sins?
How should I pay for... Well, I think the movie itself was paying for my sins. The movie it reminded me of most was Hitler Youth Quests. Not an ideology, of course, but insofar as what I was watching was something cynically manufactured, pulling cinematic techniques and cinematic quirks and tropes into a single place to make something to sell to children. In the Hitler Youth Quests, it was to try and get children to join the Hitler Youth. With this movie, it's to get people to buy smartphones and animated emojis. And, like, there are literally portions of this movie that are just commercials for things like Just Dance, Dropbox. The entire, like, MacGuffin of the movie is the Dropbox app.
Wait, does Sony own Dropbox?
I don't know.
I'm gonna have to look this up now.
I don't know. But let's find out.
You know what they should... So, like, with the North Korea hack a couple years ago, why didn't they just, like, release that script and then... Like, it probably wasn't even made yet, granted, but... like,
this feels like something that was improvised on a coke-filled orgy. With, like, but of course, like, the only people who showed up were ad executives. And it was something, like, I have never seen a more cynical movie. I will say that. I think there are, like, objectively worse things out there, like Nazi propaganda. But I've never seen something so, like, mechanically put together and just so shameless in its goals.
Yeah.
Which is to sell something to children. It's not even that, like, Movie Bob just released today an interesting video about, like, how, like, a lot of the backlash towards it is due to, like a built-in hatred towards, like, the early millennial generation. And it's sort of like we are projecting our hatreds of that culture on this movie.
Yeah, but millennials don't like this movie either.
Oh no, well, that's the thing about it. Is that, like, I think, like, to me, its greatest sin is just how shameless it is, and just how, like, clear. I think Alex put it that, like, you can see a man in the back pressing commercial here every time a new scene starts.
Based on a quick Wikipedia search, Sony does not own Dropbox.
Okay.
So that as a MacGuffin cannot be explained, apparently.
Yeah, and like, there are just, like, visuals in this movie that I just feel like I can just, like, I can just see all the priorities and specifications of how to display our logo, which is what you get when you have to make, like, a branded product. And it is also just... It is, like, atrocious in every way. I mean, like, for me to review it as a movie is to give it more credit than I want to give it.
Can I say two things?
Yes.
Two comments to get on the record. One, if I weren't paid to see it, I would rather drink every single flammable chemical in my laboratory before I see it.
You'd get more interesting results.
Yeah. And then, second of all... Fuck, what was my second thing? Oh, shit.
One thing I do want to say is that, like, this is something for, like, this, like, backlash for the movie. Like, everyone should hate this movie. I agree.
Yeah.
But as far as one of the odd things I see is that because, like, one of the things the movie tries and fails to do was to have feminist commentary, and as a result of that, I'm seeing, like, awful knee-jerk social conservatism over that, and that needs to stop, people. We're bashing a commercial, not an entire ideology.
Yeah. Okay, well, you heard it here first, folks. The Emoji Movie is comparable to Nazi propaganda, and
okay.
I'm not going to fight you on this.
No,
there was a review Darren Franich wrote,
which is a masterpiece, by the way.
It's a masterpiece, but I can see he must have been writing down at his desk, wanting to shave his beard off. Or maybe burn it after seeing it.
I mean, like, the Darren Franich, like, title of that video, which was, like, the Emoji Movie's, like, staring into an existential abyss. That is literally what you feel when you watch it.
Yeah, guys, listen, Entertainment Weekly writer and proud Vidiots customer Darren Franich, suffered through this movie so he could...
Without the aid of friends.
Yeah, so he could publish a piece describing eloquently why you should not see it.
Yeah.
So everyone hop over to EW.com and give that a read.
Shameless plug.
So would that make him movie Jesus? He watched the Emoji Movie for your sins?
Perhaps.
He wrote a very eloquent review for our sins.
I'm sure he'd relish that comparison. I mean, it's not a shameless plug because I am not at all affiliated with the Entertainment Weekly publication.
No,
So
we're just a fan.
we're just fans.
A fan and a very happy customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Have you been watching any real movies, John?
They were all in German.
Okay. All right. Well, I have some fun things to talk about.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
So, at the behest of my roommates,
Okay.
I went and saw a little movie called Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Luc Besson's Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. So, first, some background on this movie. You may or may not be aware, this movie was not financed by any major American studio. This movie was financed by Luc Besson and whatever financial backers he was able to rally.
It was the Orson Welles meeting with Winston Churchill to get a Russian business boy to give him money.
Yeah, it is. This movie, according to some reports, is both the most expensive independent film and the most expensive European film ever made.
Oh, interesting.
So, for good or for ill, this movie is 100% the vision of its writer-director, Luc Besson.
Oh boy.
Now, this movie is many things. Good is not one of them. But, fortunately, boring is also not one of them.
Okay.
This movie begins with David Bowie's Space Oddity playing over a montage that carries us into several hundred years into the future of an ever-growing space station becoming populated by more and more alien races and then being pushed free of the Earth's orbit and into outer space.
Tell me more, Tyler.
Fast forward several more years, we meet agents Valerian and Laureline of the, I guess, like, federal space government.
Okay.
Played by Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne.
Powerhouse actress.
Let me just say a word about Dane DeHaan. I'm not going to say he doesn't have potential, but I have yet to see a good performance from him. I don't know if there's some crazy, like, hidden gem that I just haven't seen where he gives a powerhouse performance, but, man, let me tell you.
I think he went to the Reed School of Acting.
Dane DeHaan is not good in this movie.
Well, one thing I have, like, from what little Luc Besson experience I have, is that he doesn't seem to give a shit about actors.
Luc Besson is interesting. I have only seen a couple of his movies. I watched part of The Professional, and I'm going to watch the rest of it at some point, because that movie actually seems pretty good.
Have you seen The Fifth Element?
Yeah, and I do not like it.
Well, I haven't seen it. That's just kind of like, that's like the comparison points everyone's making for Valerian.
I did not enjoy that movie very much, but Valerian, okay, I'll say this about this movie. Script is terrible. just awful. The character dynamics make no sense. The dialogue is just god-awful. The story is just ludicrous. The visuals are pretty creative, actually. The visuals, I mean, it's a lot of CGI, and you can tell, but just the design of it is so creative and so exuberant that you kind of, it's hard to not be kind of charmed by it.
I think I said, like, I can't remember if I said this about the BFG when I reviewed it last year, but that's one of the similar things that you can always tell it's CGI, like it's fucking Mark Rylance face, like pasted onto a giant CGI monster, but the things they do with CGI in that movie are just utterly breathtaking at times.
Yeah, I would say the same for this movie. You know, this movie, it's not good. I really kind of enjoyed it.
You know, like, the more you describe it, I just think, man, I don't know whether I would enjoy this ironically or unironically, but it would be one of them.
It cannot be enjoyed unironically. You cannot take this movie seriously.
Okay.
One of the friends that I saw it with, like, I assume was taking it seriously, and he hated it. But if you go in, you don't take it seriously, you sit back, you're like, okay, I am prepared to laugh, I am prepared to have a good time. you might have a good time.
Okay, so...
And there is a lot of unintentional humor in this movie. Just to give you an example, there is a moment in this movie... well, first of all, Ethan Hawke shows up in a great, 5-minute role as some kind of space pimp, I think. It's strange. But then Rihanna proceeds to appear, playing a shape-shifting alien. Dane DeHaan asks, "What's your name?" She says, "Bubble." And this is played entirely straight. I know this because I and many other members of the audience laughed, and we missed Dane DeHaan's next line. So I'm pretty sure that was a moment meant to be played entirely straight.
Oh my god.
So that's what we're dealing with here.
You know, we're still quoting "Don't You Stop Me from Killing These Men" a year later, so this sounds like something right up my alley.
That's apt. This is the worst movie that I've, legitimately, well, not legitimately, but the worst movie that I've enjoyed since X-Men Apocalypse, I think. So,
this seems worse than X-Men Apocalypse, because X-Men Apocalypse juggled... Holy shit, what were you thinking with, oh, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. I mean, there are some good ideas in this movie. It's strange. It's so strange, but there's a lot of kind of creative things. It's based on, a French, graphic novel series that apparently Luc Besson loved in his childhood. So there is genuine affection here. Again, not a good movie by any means, but I kind of recommend it.
Would you describe it as, a child given, millions and millions of dollars to make his dream project?
You know, that's not inaccurate.
Okay, that kind of sounds delightful.
Yeah, it kind of is. Although I will say the gender politics of this movie, hoo boy, someone needed to look at those, but... other than that, it's a very enjoyable experience.
Yes,
as long as you're...
The more you describe it, the more I want to see it. So
see it by all means. Yeah. I think you might actually kind of get a kick out of it.
Okay.
Let's see. I also ventured to my local multiplex to see Charlize Theron in Atomic Blonde.
Ooh, how's that?
It's okay. Now it's interesting. This movie was directed by one of the co-directors of the John Wick movies, which I enjoy quite a bit. The thing with this movie, you should know going in that the plot is impossible to follow. Okay. That's just a given. As soon as it finished, I turned to my friends that I saw it with, and I was like, "Well, that plot was impossible to follow," and they were like, "Oh, good, I thought it was just me." So, yeah. And now that's all well and good. That would be completely fine if this movie were all about either character beats and character exploration or balls to the wall fun action sequences.
Yeah.
The problem is it doesn't fully commit to either of those things. The characters are really not that well sketched either. And surprisingly, coming from a guy who co-directed the John Wick movies, there are way fewer, big action set pieces in it than you think. The ones that are there are really good. They're pretty fun. They're really cool. There's one late in the movie that's, it wasn't done all in one take, but it's, all gussied up to look like one shot. That's really cool. It's a cool-looking movie. It's set against the backdrop of, the late 80s when and the Berlin Wall coming down. They're literally in Berlin, as the wall is coming down. Really cool, backdrop for a movie. Now, the problem is...
You're saying a lot of things I like.
Yeah, but here's the deal. The issue is they spend a lot of time presenting this impossible-to-follow plot to you like they expect you to follow it. So, again, if it had just been, all about the action, that would have been 100% fine. But because there isn't quite as much action as maybe there should have been, and they kind of, treat the plot like you're supposed to, be following it and be paying attention to it, it doesn't quite work. And it's also just too long. There's an ending tacked onto it that is completely pointless and makes no sense. And
so what you're describing is a shorter Inherent Vice.
Kind of, but a very different sensibility, obviously.
Yeah, well, of course.
I don't know. It's cool. The soundtrack is great. It looks really cool. James McAvoy is a lot of fun. Charlize Theron is great. I don't know. It's fine. I kind of enjoyed it. I was just kind of let down by the fact that
it's another episode in summer movie disappointment.
Yeah, well, what I hate more than anything is when movies like half-ass things, and this is a movie full of half-assing. I'm sorry to say, I was really excited for this movie, and I really wanted it to be really good, but
that's disappointing.
I don't know. Charlize Theron is great. I want nothing but the best for her.
Well, of course.
So that's that. And then on the plane, instead of watching Fox and His Friends, which I maybe should have done, I was flying American Airlines, which has free movies. Hey,
plug.
Yeah, sure. I am neither endorsing nor condemning American Airlines. Completely ambivalent. But I chose to rewatch a movie I had not watched in several years. Pixar's The Incredibles. So this movie.
It's been several years.
What?
Had it really been several years?
Yeah, well, this movie was like the one like undisputable Pixar classic that was not part of my big Pixar rewatch a couple years ago. That was not by my choice. Our DVD got lost a while back, so I did not have ready access to it. So it had been a while since I watched this movie. I was surprised though by how like almost exactly I remembered it, because I watched this movie a lot when I was younger.
Yep, I did too.
Yeah, I remember, just to go off on a full tangent here, this was the first movie where I remember, like, maniacally following, like, the lead up to it. Like, all the marketing, all the stuff that came out about it, I was on it. I was so excited for this movie, and it actually, like, met my expectations. I was not disappointed in the least. I was still young enough to not be
I think, like, the first
disappointed
movie
and cynical.
For me, like, that was probably Finding Nemo.
Okay, so you hit it at the Pixar movie before me.
Yes.
I still wasn't quite at that point with Finding Nemo. But The Incredibles just seemed like all the candy in one place when I was a kid. So, I mean, this movie's great. That's not a controversial thing to say.
No.
I think, just because I'd remembered it so well, and I'd, like, would catch parts of it on TV, over the years.
It's been fairly in rotation.
Yeah, there are things, like, I had kind of picked up on things that I realized I had missed as a kid, like the whole, like, kind of allegory for marital strife and infidelity and all that stuff. So, I was fully prepared for that on this watch. It's just great, man. And I think this movie only plays better and better as we get further into the superhero era. And, just looking at how maturely, I think that's a word, it treats its characters is so refreshing. And, this is it's also interesting. It's kind of interesting that, like, Disney allowed this movie to have some of the stuff it had.
I'm surprised Brad Bird has made as many Pixar movies as he had, because he just makes adult films disguised as children's films.
There was some dark shit in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, fucking superheroine gets sucked into a jet turbine. Like, what the shit?
There is an entire montage of superheroes comedically dying.
Yeah, I love it, man.
Oh yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah, it's great. I think when we did our Pixar episode, I had it at number 2. I mean, that's probably about where it's in the top 2 or 3 for sure. I think I have, like, the Toy Story movies are a little bit more near and dear to my heart, but this is certainly one that is a perennial favorite.
I think it's like it is one of the Pixar masterpieces.
Yeah,
that's undisputed.
It also has one of the best locations for a villain hideout. That fucking ball tram system is the best. It's the best.
The design of this movie is great.
Oh yeah, like it's kind of got like this faux 1950s like Roger Moore style.
Yeah. I mean, I used to think this movie, like, when I was a kid, I used to think this movie took place in the future. Like, now I recognize this is very clearly intended as, like, a kind of retro, Roger Moore era James Bond.
Like, there's 50s style suburbia, and, like, chrome-plated cars, but also, like, this giant fuck-off rocket.
Yeah.
And private planes.
Yeah.
And private planes that go underwater that connect with giant ball
But also,
and that's awesome.
But also answering machines.
Yes.
I don't know. But that's The Incredibles. So let's get into some Fassbinder here, shall we?
Boy. Where do we want to start? Because like there's kind of a disparity.
Yeah, okay,
in what
so
we watch.
we were a little unclear about what we were going to watch this week. We all watched The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant.
Yes.
I watched Fox and His Friends, and then you two watched The Marriage of Maria Braun.
Yes.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
Let me just quickly run down Fox and His Friends, I guess, and then we can talk about Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant.
I will say that looking up Fox and His Friends just got me a myriad of results for Disney's The Fox and the Hound.
If you show this movie to your kid expecting The Fox and the Hound, oh boy, that kid is in for a wild ride. Actually, they'll probably just get bored. But if they stick with it, they're in for a wild ride. Okay, so this movie follows Rainer Werner Fassbinder himself as Fox, aka Franz Bieberkopf, something like that.
I didn't watch it, man.
Terrible name.
Anyway,
Bieber.
Bieberkopf? I don't know. He is a kind of down on his luck, naive, kind of wide-eyed, gay German citizen.
Mm-hmm.
His boyfriend goes to jail for like tax evasion, I think, or something. I don't know. It's kind of unclear. They all like work at a carnival, and then the movie opens with like his boyfriend being taken away by the police.
Okay.
So he is also like a frequent lottery player. For the opening like 15-20 minutes of the movie feature him trying to get enough money to buy another lottery ticket. He gets one and wins, I think, 500,000 marks. And we fast forward a few months to him now like newly wealthy, kind of moving into like circles of like the kind of the more upper crust. There's a wonderful character who they call Uncle Max, who's like a more like kind of upper class gay man. This movie is a very interesting kind of exploration of like 1970s German, the 1970s German gay community.
Yeah, especially this is right before the AIDS crisis and these sort of like, pride rallies.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, Fox is kind of noticed by another gay man named Eugen. I think that's how you pronounce it. Eugen, something like that.
We'll call it Eugen.
Yeah, a member.
What about you, German boy? Do you know how to pronounce it?
Eugen. Eugen.
That's also Eugene.
Okay, well they call him Eugen. So Eugen basically kind of seduces Fox, and Eugen is like a much more like upper crust kind of person, and in a way that kind of reads like My Fair Lady, but like much more insidious. Eugen starts to kind of take advantage of Fox and his money and trying to like turn him into a high society kind of person.
Interesting.
He has him, they like buy an apartment and furnish it with like super gaudy, expensive furniture. He tries to like teach him how to, there's a couple like great scenes of them eating with Eugen's parents and Fox just having horrible table manners and Eugen kind of reprimanding him. This movie's interesting. I didn't love it. It kind of gets kind of samey after a while. You're like, it is interesting though, because after a while you're kind of like it seems like Eugen and Fox are like in a relationship for like a couple of years. So you're kind of like, well, is he just like taking him for a ride, or does he actually care about him?
Yeah.
Like that's all interesting.
Yeah, I think Fassbinder has a very large fixation on sort of like the obligations and the sort of nature of relationships, and especially like and how especially when you get into Petra von Kant, how rooted in gender dynamics they are.
Yeah, it's and I do think this movie is like too long. I think it's a little drawn out. It could have been compressed pretty easily. I think.
Well, that's not something that happens ever again in a Fassbinder movie.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it does get a little bit samey. You're just kind of like, okay, yes, I get it. Like, Eugen is taking advantage of him. He wants Fox to be high society. Fox will never be high society. Okay, I get the point here. And then eventually they break up and Eugen, like, cuts Fox off from everything and everyone abandons him. And then he dies.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's a fun little movie.
Yeah, yeah, that's the sort of thing we're going to get into, is that, like, we're going to get into this with... The Marriage of Maria Braun is how, like, really interesting ideas, but Fassbinder just seems kind of run out of steam with them, and just kind of does more scenes reinforcing that theme, which isn't the worst thing to do, which just doesn't make for very gripping cinema.
I think it works. I think that works better in Maria Braun than Petra.
Petra,
Because I feel like he was doing that in Petra. Never mind. We will get.
Yeah, well, that's baked in the Petra Von Kant more.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Do you have anything left to say on Fox?
Not really. I was not super engaged with it. By the end of it, I was just kind of like, okay, I get the point. Can he just die?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting like portrayal of a community in a time and a place. I think, and that's kind
like,
of the thing I
Fassbinder
most
is a very
value it for.
progressive filmmaker as well, and that's something to be noted.
That's something to be valued. But on the whole, it's kind of a hit or miss kind of thing.
Okay.
But let's move on to The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant.
This is a movie that takes place in a single location, focused on sort of a very similar cast of characters, and does not star a man.
Yeah, all-female cast. Also based on a play that Fassbinder wrote.
Fassbinder wrote, yes.
So, yeah, this movie takes place almost entirely in the bedroom of the eponymous character.
Petra von Kant.
Yes. She is I guess, kind of noted fashion designer.
Fashion designer in Bremen.
Yeah, in Bremen, yeah. She is introduced to a kind of neophyte named, what's her name? Karin,
yes.
Karin.
Yeah, who she's introduced to. Also, I forgot to mention, Petra lives with a, I don't think she's mute, but she doesn't talk.
I don't think I think she maybe says one word.
I don't even know if she speaks at all. She's a silent, just servile, I think, like, just masochistic, like, servant named, it's kind of ambiguous.
I think, like, the description of the movie describes her as almost with slave-like devotion.
Yeah.
And that is...
Well, it's weird.
There's some interesting power dynamics
when
there.
you put, like, masochist, then it's like, that makes a little bit more...
Well, the movie's all about power and sort of how, like, power dynamics change, especially at the end, especially within, like, certain roles in society and also within family.
Well, they never spell it out for you, but, like, based on, like, all the kind of reviews I read of it, and also, like, based on the ending, it seems like she is deriving some kind of, like, weird masochistic pleasure from serving her. I don't know, it's
potentially.
Weird. Well, I didn't even get to her name. What's her name? Marlena? Marlena. Anyway, Petra is introduced to Karin, and pretty much immediately, like, becomes obsessed with her. She invites her to, like, become a fashion model and to live with her. Fast forward to 6 months later, Karin is already just bored out of her mind. And it's a very simple story. It's a series of scenes, like, basically just played out in real time. You can very much tell this movie was adapted from a play.
Yeah, there's, like, long conversations about, like, the nature of relationships and gender dynamics, and...
it's a strange movie.
Yeah, and sort of all wrapped up in, like societal and familial power dynamics, insofar as, like, there's, like, during all these, like, long conversations about power and dynamics, you just see the little servant painting away in the background or typing up, and like the sound design's interesting because, like, it'll accentuate certain things, like the typewriter going off.
I love that. Like, that's one scene where Petra's talking to Karin. You're always hearing the typewriter, like, clunking away in the background. This movie looks great.
It does,
the design is incredible. That set is unbelievable.
Yeah, where you have, like, it's this, like, modernist 70s home, and, like, there's this giant relief of Roman art on the walls.
Yeah, that's all great. Yeah, Michael Ballhaus, the late Michael Ballhaus, R.I.P. Immortal. He shot this movie as he did several of Fassbinder's movies. Looks incredible. I did like this movie. There's a lot of interesting things going on.
Yes.
I did feel like, after watching Fox and His Friends and this movie, I think I've kind of come to terms with the fact that, like, there's something about Fassbinder's movies that kind of prevents me from really engaging with them. I see it as this kind of remove that he has. Because, like, even, like, in Fox and His Friends, he literally, like, plays the lead character, and I never get the sense in that movie, in this movie, maybe a little bit in Fear Eats the Soul, but, like, not much. I just do not get the sense that he has, like, any empathy for his characters.
Yeah, well, there's also, like, especially the way, like, the movie begins, where, like Petra von Kant is, like, talking to herself as being busy and doing all these things, but she's just lying in her bed as Marine runs around and does everything in the household. There is a detest for this character, and, like, especially at the end, like, for all of her, like, sophisticated talk about relationships, she just starts acting like a child at the end, especially when her mother enters the room.
And that's all fine, but, like, I don't know, it's just the way he writes his stuff and the way the filmmaking is, like, he very rarely, like, goes to close-ups. He, you know, shoots it all, like, kind of from mediums and medium wides. I always, with his movies, I kind of feel like I'm, like, watching, like, an exhibition of humanity from behind glass a little bit.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of the point. Like, my issue with that is that he doesn't play with that enough. I think that is a style of his. It's an interesting style.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm not sure, like, he knows completely how to play with it as far as, because, like, there are, like, some really interesting ideas about humanity and the sort of, like, distant view of it. The issue is, like, he doesn't really build upon them. He has like, a wonderful premise, but then but that premise just sort of stays unchanged for the remainder of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's a master craftsman. His movies all look great. The performances are really good. And I don't know if this is just like a European thing and, you know, they don't play by like the same like storytelling rules that we do. But I don't know, like with like Kieslowski's movies, like you really feel like he understands and like feels for these characters, and you're like right up there with them. And with Fassbinder's movies, I just don't get that feeling. And I don't know. There's a lot of interesting thematic stuff going on in this movie, like all the stuff about power dynamics. Well, the other major thing, my other big issue with this movie is that like, and I don't know if it necessarily, like, had to, you know, I hate, you know, obviously she didn't have to, like, come right out and be like, this is why I love you, but, like, I don't get at all why, like, Petra is in love with this woman.
She starts acting like a child, and it's jarring.
She showed, like, Karin shows up, and Petra von Kant's immediately like, I love you, I want to be with you forever.
I need and I'm you like, and me.
And I'm like, why? Like, I have no idea. It's very difficult to suss out, and I just don't know.
Yeah. What do you think, Reed?
Can I ask a question? Did you
you
feel bored by this movie at any point?
Occasionally.
Because
I am bored by like the 90-minute mark.
I would have to admit I was bored by the 15 minute.
Well,
there were a lot of interesting conversations in this movie, don't get me wrong, but I felt very hard for me to get attached to Petra.
Yeah, well, I think it's the sort of thing is, and granted, like, there are, like, filmmakers who can, like, show you awful characters and get you to attach to them, like Scorsese's excellent as this. But, like, I think, like, Fassbinder is all about, like, making you despise, he despises some of his characters, and he wants you to feel that same remove from them, but that just doesn't always make for interesting cinema.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fine, but you can judge a character while still, like, engaging with them and engaging with their world and their worldview.
That's an issue I also
even if you're, like, repelled by them, and this movie really does not allow you to do that at all, and that's a bit of an issue. So I can completely understand why you were bored, Reed.
Yeah, it makes a 2-hour movie feel like a 4-hour movie.
Yes, especially like at the there is always like a point where like Fassbinder just starts repeating himself, and it's like, okay, we just need to wrap this up in a bow.
I forgot to mention there's a point in Fox and His Friends where he goes to the bank and he's like, I want like this much, like 100,000 marks in cash, and then the teller goes like, in cash? In cash. You want it in cash? Yes, in cash. In cash? And that goes on for like 30 seconds. And I'm like, what the fuck? I will never forget the German for in cash now. It's en bar. Yeah. So that's just weird. What was I going to say? Also, like, the first, like, I don't know, like 15, 20 minutes of this movie are not, like, the most thrilling thing in the world.
No, it's literally just like a woman waking up.
Yeah,
and
it's
just being bored.
it's Petra waking up, like, kind of, like, being bored with the world, and, like, then going on about, like, her backstory and her experiences with men. It's not the most well-written.
Yeah, my thing is I'm just so, like, enamored by, like, the surroundings and the set and, like, the cinematography that I kind of ignore that for a while.
Yeah.
But regardless, so yeah, I think it's like a really interesting movie, and I really like the first 90 minutes.
I do like the first. I mean, I also do kind of like the last, like, kind of little, like, 15, 20 minute stretch of it. Like, when her daughter, like, comes over and it's her birthday, and her daughter comes over and her mom comes over, and that other woman, Sidonie, I think who I think is her cousin.
I think so. It's kind of unclear.
Comes over, and then she, like, this is so weird. Sidonie gives her a doll that looks exactly like Karin.
Yes.
You also have that wonderful background thing where, like, the two female mannequins appear to be fucking in the bed in the background.
Yeah.
That's very strange. I don't know. I kind of like that. I mean, and Petra starts just acting like a child, and she seems to just break down completely. And then you get that great moment at the very end. The ending of this movie
the ending's great.
Is fantastic, where she tells Marlena, like, things are going to change. Like, we're going to be, like, equals now. I want you to help me. And then Marlena immediately, like, packs all her things and leaves.
Yeah, it leaves.
Which kind of recontextualizes her entire character for the movie, which I think is fascinating. As we talked about, it seems like maybe she relished this servile position more than we thought. So this movie's interesting. It's not the most entertaining thing in the world, but if you can kind of get into the themes of it, it's kind of a rewarding experience.
I'd argue so. I think, like, Fassbinder can write fascinating dialogue at times.
And of course, it's a visual feast.
Oh, certainly.
But this isn't one I'll be buying on Criterion Blu-ray anytime soon.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about the Marriage of Maria Braun?
Yes, the German time bandits of Fassbinder movies.
I want to talk about the beginning for a bit, because, like, this movie just throws you in. You just get, like, an exterior of a building during a bombing raid during the war. Like, signs are falling off, windows are blowing out as there's a marriage going on. Like, there's an image where, like, a wall gets blown out and you can see a wedding through the rubble. And
that's really interesting.
It's the wedding of Maria Braun.
Oh, okay.
Maria Braun.
And then, like, at one point, there's like papers falling from the sky and air raid sirens going off, and then freeze frame, the credits roll.
The credits roll. It's in red cursive, and it's cut off. And, like,
it's filling the screen in every moment. It is the most insane thing, and I love it.
It's like Fassbinder got mad at everyone on set and said, you know what? For the opening credits,
you're getting bombed, bitch.
You are getting bombed, and no one can read any of their names.
But then the movie turns into it's kind of Fassbinder's musings on post-war Germany, particularly West Germany, obviously.
Yes.
Whereas, like one of the big themes of it is sort of like musings on the we're back, like, phase of German history. Whereas, like, I think where that was a kind of a point where, like, the economy was recovering and, like, national pride was rising once again. And it kind of accumulated in, like, Germany winning the World Cup.
Yes.
Which is why they play that at the end. At the ending of this movie is all set to, like, a radio broadcast of the World Cup final where Germany wins.
Which
and there's also, like,
juxtaposed by something we will talk about later.
Yeah, and there's also, like, speeches from the Chancellor Konrad. How do you pronounce it? Adhauser? Or?
Konrad Adenauer.
Adenauer. Thank you.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Because every time we hear him speak, he talks about Germany and like the controversial point of armaments.
Armament, yes.
And towards the beginning, he's like, oh God, no, we won't do that. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, it's like, why shouldn't we?
Yeah, it's again like the idea of, like, we're back, like the idea of German pride and connecting that to a military.
Exactly.
And, like, set in the middle of all of this is, like, the story of Maria Braun, who starts the movie, like, waiting for her husband to come back from war.
Yes.
And, like, she's also, like, working. It's kind of like, is she like a stripper, or does she just, like, work at this, like, at like occupational soldiers only bar.
She might be working streets. Because I don't... Well, she might be working at the bar, but she certainly wasn't working when we...
Yeah, and then she like gets hooked up. She gets hooked up with like a black American soldier, one of the occupational forces.
Who learns German and she learns
English
from him, which I thought was a very nice touch.
Which was delightful. But then her husband comes back and then kills the black man.
Right in the middle of fucking.
Funny.
Right in the middle. Yeah. Right in the middle of fucking. Well, almost fucking.
Yeah. His cock's out the whole time.
Now that's funny.
But regardless, then what happens next? Like what? Then like at a certain point, like Maria gets. Well, of course, like the husband goes to jail, and then Maria gets on a train ride.
I think she gets an abortion.
Yeah, she does get an abortion because she got pregnant with the soldiers.
And she had to go to the Black Forest, and then on the way back,
she meets with like a businessman, and then gets, because like she's like bilingual, she then works for him, and then
later becomes his mistress.
Yeah, they have an affair, and then it turns into sort of Maria Braun as capitalist mistress. And, like, there's lots of themes, like the brutality of capitalism.
The steel nails of post-war German capitalism.
Yes.
This movie sounds bananas.
It is, but then it hits, like, I'm going to call it the Fassbinder wall, where it kind of runs out of those ideas.
Around the 90-minute mark.
Yeah, around the 90-minute, where it kind of just runs out of those ideas. It kind of plays on repeat. Like, there were fascinating scenes in that where, like...
Let me just say, my favorite movie of his that I've seen so far is Ali Fears the Soul. Coincidentally, that movie's like 85 minutes long.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah.
But yes, and then again, there are more Chancellor Conrad speeches and Adenauer. Thank you.
He's a classical politician. German history.
I know. I recognize him, but I don't speak German. I've only read the name. And then it's sort of then it becomes, there's sort of a strange love triangle between the businessman, the jailed husband, and her.
Yeah, so she has an interest in setting up a future for her and her husband who's in jail for when he gets out of jail. Mm-hmm. But she's kind of caught in the middle with her boss. Presumably that like she gets money. Yeah, well, like she's like getting paid and so forth, and like this man's very wealthy, and like there was also like the idea of that like she views like sex and these sort of relationships as frivolous and something that can be thrown away at the last moment. Frivolous,
but then like
thrown away and maybe used as tools.
Yes, but the men in her life, like that soldier and the businessman, get really attached to her. Like the soldier has a child, gets pregnant with her, but then like she casually gets an abortion. It almost seems happy about it, and that's really
pretty sudden. Well, like a jump cut since like. Wait, why is she there with the doctor? Oh, because she did that. It's not as obvious, but then...
Yeah, and there's almost like a smile on her face. It's strange. Yeah. And then when she does get back, when the husband does get out of jail, there's sort of like a cold remove.
There's a cold remove when he goes to Canada or Australia. Canada. I was going to say Canada.
Yeah.
And then Fassbinder reveals Maria as this mad woman. I'm going to say mad woman. But I know there's like a description. Yeah, there's sort of like her. She becomes more frivolous again. Like it's kind of like an analogy for like rising German capitalism, where she kind of just be like she buys a house and like she's very cruel to her mother at that point as like they're touring it. She's very cruel to her assistant, especially in that scene.
Oh yeah, where she's like, "Tell him I'm the devil, and that he can meet the devil at this restaurant." And so forth. Like it's all very interesting. Like the issue is that like at a certain point, like it sort of runs out of concrete ideas, and just sort of like is stuck on repeat, especially with this businessman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Though like there are like fascinating scenes. Like at one point the businessman meets with the husband in jail. But Reed, you want to talk about the ending? Okay.
Let's go. Okay.
The ending of this movie, we are in Maria Braun's house.
In the countryside.
In the countryside. Husband's gone out. Very nice house.
Very nice house.
And they're kind of walking around. Like Maria's walking around in lingerie, and they're sort of like they're gonna have sex at some point.
At some point, and then knocks on the door is the capitalist's accountant.
Yeah, the accountant of the businessman.
Executive accountant, and with someone executing the will.
Mm-hmm.
And then we reveal that basically all of the capitalist empire goes to the Browns.
The Browns, yes.
And then right after,
and then there is, and this is all set to like we hear blaring in the background the like radio broadcast of Germany in the World Cup.
Yes.
And like at one point, you just hear someone screaming, "Goal! Goal! Goal! Goal!" And then, at one point, Maria turns on the gas to light a cigarette.
That was before.
That was
before all this.
But never turns off the gas. So later on, after all the will stuff has been executed, then they leave.
We hear an explosion.
There's an explosion.
And then the executor goes, "Ah!"
They're all dead. And then, but here's the thing about it, like, the explosion happens, you get a reaction shot of the people leaving, the credits then flash up the Marriage of Maria Braun, and then the credits are rolling as he goes back and discovers them dead. It is the most bonkers ending since Time Bandits.
Well, actually, this came before Time Bandits.
Maybe Terry Gilliam was inspired by it.
I think so, except I guess this...
Granted, Time Bandits makes even less sense.
Yeah,
so.
This makes more sense. I don't want to dissect why...
I mean, I don't want to just dissect, like, the early credits.
I don't want to dissect, like, the ending and, like, you know, what made her go and all, because this is a free podcast. We're not writing a fucking paper. So...
what I'm gleaning from this is life is random and unpredictable and sometimes tragic.
And frivolous.
And it blows up in your face!
I think it's more, I guess it's sort of like capitalist life is something that can be thrown away, just like all her lovers, I suppose.
Or up in smokes.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention, Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant features a great use of smoke gets in your eyes, but... So, do you guys have any closing thoughts on the Marriage of Maria Braun?
Smoking kills.
Smoking does kill.
It's a,
Apparently so.
It is a fascinating tale about post-war Germany and the mentality about, like, the rise of German capitalism, especially in West Germany, obviously, and the sort of, like, social dynamics about it. Because, like, there's also, like, the subplot of, like, Maria as a sort of... as an innovator in her family, because like she's the first one to buy a home, and there's also like some like her like if she meets a doctor who calls her like Little Maria, and like how like her as a woman is sort of subverting this idea of who owns a home,
yes,
and so forth.
Which is nice juxtaposition for what probably might have happened at the time in Germany.
Yeah, the issue is, like, again, at the 90-minute mark, it just starts repeating itself, and I was just really, really bored until that batshit crazy ending. Yeah. What about you?
I thought this movie was fine / okay.
I think like the first parts of the first 90 minutes and the ending are utterly arresting.
It was an interesting portrait of like just how different Maria Braun's family was in the beginning of the film. They're squandering in their apartment, and then later on they're at a brand new place, shiny growth, nice capitalism.
Yeah, and there's also like plot where her and some family members go back to that like their old bombed out apartment, and that's the and they just talk in the ruins of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in this movie. But it manages to still be kind of a chore to watch at times.
Yeah, this once again hits the Fassbinder wall.
The Fassbinder.
And it just so happens that they also hit a button on the Fassbinder wall that
Called
blows up the movie
explosion.
at the end.
Yeah.
So, yeah. If any of this sounds really interesting to you, I'd give it a watch.
Well, I would like to maybe see it at some point. I don't think I'm going to be rushing to see it
No.
because I'm finding Fassbinder is a filmmaker I admire more than I like, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at,
His
too.
movies are kind of both interesting and frustrating in kind of equal
like
measure.
the way I'm describing it, I'm making it sound way more interesting than it is as a watch sometimes.
But what I'd really love to see is a movie about Fassbinder's life because, this guy just, he worked like a madman. He made so many movies, plus like a 15-hour miniseries.
Yes.
His personal life was insane. He had so many relationships with both men and women. He partied like crazy. He would cast his lovers in his movies. Like the actress playing
Marlene?
Marlena in Petra von Kant was his lover at the time.
Oh boy.
And so, yeah, he was...
I'm going to cast you and you will not talk.
Yeah, he led a crazy life, and he died from, a toxic drug mixture or something.
On set, he would also, try to get his actors to, fight each other in the background to get better performances out of them.
Yeah, he's a fascinating figure. His movies are fascinating, but perhaps not the most...
watchable.
Yeah, perhaps not the most watchable.
Except for, I think Ali Fear Eats the Soul is delightful.
That's one I recommend.
Does it have the infamous Fassbinder wall?
It ends at the Fassbinder wall.
Yeah, it's too short to really have the Fassbinder wall, which is refreshing. But guys, what do we want to do next time?
What are we going to do next week? Were we thinking of French cinema, or are we thinking of something else?
We could do French. I didn't really have anything in mind. There's a couple of... Yes?
This might be a bold suggestion, but we can do Jacques Tati.
Ooh, Jacques Tati.
Maybe
I've never seen Playtime.
Okay.
Neither have I.
I've seen Playtime.
Ooh.
Wait, I've seen a movie neither of you has seen. Holy
fuck me.
Interesting.
Okay.
This is not what I was expecting.
Unless you had something else in mind.
I didn't really have anything. There are a few French filmmakers. I mean, we
talked about Truffaut.
We talked about doing some French New Wave stuff. I'd wanted to do Louis Malle. There's another French filmmaker named...
Renoir.
We should do Renoir at some point. Jean-Pierre Melville was one I was thinking of.
Yeah,
and then there's another more contemporary filmmaker named Olivier Assayas that I would be interested in doing at some point.
So do we want to do Jacques Tati?
But we can do Jacques Tati.
Yeah,
that'd be great, actually.
That'd be a very delightful time.
Okay.
Fun story. Before Vidiot's closed its Santa Monica location, my roommates and I rented Playtime,
But never
kept it for
watched
2 weeks, and never watched it.
So yeah, let's.
So
yeah, definitely we're gonna watch Playtime. Have either of you seen Mon Oncle?
See, I saw about 1/3 of it, fell asleep while watching it, and then it was class. So I saw of Jacques Tati's Mon Oncle and Playtime, which I had to see for a class at college. Except I was only able to see Playtime all the way through, so I'd like to go back through Mon Oncle.
Okay. So we can do Playtime and Mon Oncle. That'd be sort of a way for me I'd be willing to see that movie again because that was in the sleepy haze of an evening class.
Okay, so we're doing Jacques Tati's Playtime and Mon Oncle.
Do you have any other suggestions as far as...
I am not familiar with Tati's work at all, really. So this is fine by me.
Yeah, his sort of thing is giant, colorful, silent comedy set in the modernist terror of 60s France.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, sounds delightful. All right, so we will be back next week with Jacques Tati's Mon Oncle and Playtime.
Yes.
Hopefully a little less frustrating than this week's selections.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Okay.
What did you think of Playtime?
We'll find out.
It was visually nice.
Okay then.
Okay.
Visually nice.
Visually nice.
Come back for more hot takes like that.
I would like to admit something.
What would you like to admit?
My parents don't know about podcast where to find this podcast.
It's probably for the better.
I was gonna say
There's a lot of rude language in this podcast.
yeah, I would fucking say so. Oops.
My parents know about it. I frequently say when I'm at home, which is rarely, but when I'm at home, I say, I'm going to John's, we're going to do the podcast, and they're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, my parents think the podcast is hilarious. They don't listen to it, they just look at us recording it, and Mama just thinks it's the most curious thing, because we're all bunched up together, and we're like little penguins.
Crowded around a Mac.
Crowded around a Mac.
Yeah, not even an external microphone. We're so lo-fi.
It's part of our charm.
Especially ass microphones. But we will get to that.
The jury's still out.
Eventually.
This will be some nice noise in the background. They call it flavor in the biz. They don't call it that.
Oh. I thought you might have some insight into the podcast biz that I was not aware of.
There is none.
Oh.
It's just wing it and get a good microphone.
There you go.
I think unintentional comedy is more rewarding than intentional comedy, to be honest.
It can be sometimes.
Yeah. I know. I think there's also just something transgressive about like wonderfully transgressive about laughing when a movie doesn't want you to laugh, especially when you're with friends.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
What?
How does Interstellar end?
Interstellar ends with a man going into a black hole, which then transports him to some kind of fifth-dimensional box built by aliens.
No. The aliens are us from the future.
Oh!
From the far distant future.
It's built by us in the future, and it's all just his child's bedroom
Yes.
at every point in time.
Yes.
And then he takes a book and he types out in Morse code onto a watch the secrets of the universe.
How to solve gravity.
How to solve gravity. Then his daughter goes and builds an anti-gravity or a gravity-defying paradise for us to live in next to, was it Jupiter or Saturn?
I don't remember. And then
Who
Matthew
cares?
McConaughey goes to the future and sees his daughter die, and then he
Goes
goes back out in space to find Anne Hathaway.
It's the worst
It's
Nolan
horrible.
ending.
It's so horrible.
It sounds like Christopher Nolan watched 2001: A Space Odyssey.
It said, I can do better!
Fixated on that final scene and said, you know what?
Let's try and make it make sense.
Let's try to make it make sense.
I wonder what Hal's doing right now. That's...
Okay, well, I'm never going to see that movie, so thank you for telling me.
It's terrible. Where was I?
My daughter's a lesbian? God damn it!
It's like one of those old-time cars. You need a crank to start them up to get them going.
A runabout. I'll steal it. No one will ever know. Have you ever seen that cartoon?
What is it?
The Dover Boys?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, you should watch The Dover Boys.
Oh,
Anyway.
I shall.
But back to Petra von Kant.